Star Wars Outlaws was revealed nearly 3 months ago, and since then we've learned quite a lot about the game, especially in the first 6 weeks or so, and because of that I've been wondering lately if it's actually going to be releasing sooner than I anticipated. Before I get into my reasonings for that though, make sure you are subscribed to the channel with the notification bell turned on to stay up to date with all things Star Wars Outlaws. So when Outlaws was announced back in June, all they said regarding the release date was 2024. Now obviously that gives Ubisoft and Massive Entertainment a 12-month window in which to release the game on time, and perhaps they only stated the year as to not set player expectations too high, because that is often a lot of added pressure, which by only stating the year can relieve a lot of that. Massive Entertainment have also been working on the upcoming Avatar Frontiers of Pandora game though, and that is due to release in December this year, so my initial thoughts were that Outlaws surely wouldn't release for almost another year or so, because if it released very shortly after, it could almost take away from Avatar's release or vice versa, and also since they've been working on both games and they're both pretty huge by the sounds of it, Outlaws may not even be finished at that point either. It's also a bit of an interesting scenario, as I don't think I've ever seen it where one studio is working on two huge IPs that are different, but they ultimately come from the same parent company, which is Disney, so Disney themselves may have quite a bit to say about this release situation, but obviously if we get to early next year and Outlaws isn't finished yet, then it will naturally just release later in the year. So because of all this regarding Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, I genuinely thought that Outlaws was going to be releasing in November 2024, or at least around that point, but I have since changed my mind a little bit. Sure, if it does come out in November next year, that's still great because it is still 2024 like they initially promised, but I actually wouldn't be too surprised if we saw a release in April or May next year either. The game got a huge reveal in June this year with a trailer and gameplay straight after, along with tons of details about the game and how things worked, and since SDCC in late July we haven't really heard too much apart from the occasional article, so I don't expect to hear too much for quite a while now, but I honestly don't see why any of that would have happened in the way that it did if the game was still about 18 months away from launch. Don't get me wrong, that is absolutely a possibility, but I think it makes so much more sense to do all of that and release the game in late spring or early summer next year. Now if we take a quick look at Star Wars Jedi Survivor, we didn't actually see any gameplay for that until about 2 or 3 months before launch. It probably helps that we knew it was a sequel to Fallen Order, so the gameplay would be very similar, but that whole marketing push began at the Game Awards in December 2022 and pushed pretty hard for about 4 months until release, so I think that could absolutely be a possibility. Obviously there are different types of marketing strategies within games, but I have pretty high hopes that Outlaws could ultimately be releasing in less than 12 months time. I think another thing to bear in mind as well is actually that single player games with regards to hype actually die off pretty quickly. If we take a look at Jedi Survivor, there was obviously so much hype for the game at launch and pre-launch, but then about a month or two after you pretty much never really hear anything about it apart from people deep rooted in the community. And that typically happens with a lot of single player games. If we take a look at Cyberpunk 2077 for example, there was hype for years about that game. Obviously it had its whole launch fiasco with the whole bugs and everything, but still the story was said to be really good, and hype for that died off pretty quickly after its release. So I'm very much anticipating the same to be said for Avatar when that releases later this year. There will no doubt be a huge marketing push and a lot of hype for it, but then a month or two after its release it'll probably be fairly quiet, so that would then give Outlaws a huge opportunity in which to market and release. Obviously I could be very wrong about all of this, so do remember that this is purely speculative, but I would love to hear your thoughts about this all in the comments below. Do you think Outlaws will release in less than 12 months time, or do you think it could be later next year? That is going to be it from me today though. Thank you all very much for watching, and may the force be with you always.